The case that we use in D. Ray's case, right, in the BLM case, is a case called Brandenburg versus Ohio, is a case on a Nazi, right? The same set of facts. A Nazi march, some crazy Nazi gets violent, and they hold the Nazi organizer responsible for the violence.
Right. And essentially in that case, what you're saying is that that was a crazy Nazi who should not be conflated with the peaceful Nazi, which even though that's an insane sentence to say,
it's the way we have to think about it, right?
Anthony Romero became the executive director of the American Civil Liberties Union in September 2001. And ever since that moment, it seems like our civil liberties have been under attack. So either it was his fault or maybe something else happened that month. I don't know. But for the past century, ACLU has helped shape landmark Supreme Court cases like Korematsu versus United States in 1944, which challenged the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. Loving versus Virginia in 1967, which legalized interracial marriage. Roe v. Wade in 1973, which legalized abortion for a while. In other cases, supporting LGBTQ+ rights, voting rights, privacy rights, and criminal justice reform. But make no mistake, the ACLU is not an arm of the Democratic Party. It will go to the mat to defend the speech of people who say the N-word, and not just when they're singing Kanye at karaoke. So I sat down with Anthony to talk about why it's so important to defend free speech, even the free speech of people that you disagree with.
If you allow them to do this against people you don't like, they're going to use that power on individuals you do like.
How he's feeling about the ACLU's chances at the Supreme Court.
We're going to win both of those.
And I asked him a question I think every civil rights lawyer is asking themselves right now. Do I miss George W. Bush?
Hurry right away, no delay, stop the day. Make your daddy glad you have had such a laugh.
when I'm reading the news and it says the ACLU is fighting on behalf of,
right,
or it'll say the ACLU is representing
right,
blank. What does that mean?
Clients. We represent the people's interests, the rights of individuals who come to us if they encounter some injustice. So when people walk in the front door of our offices and say, hey, I've been treated poorly, I've been wronged, can you help? And that's what we do. We tend to take the rights and liberties.
And you will take on that case?
We'll take on those cases.
So it's essentially a civil liberties legal GoFundMe.
It's a civil liberties organization. We're entirely nonprofit, so people don't pay anything, even if you're rich or poor. We do it for free. We don't charge any of our clients any money. And so we have, like, for instance, a client walked into our front door in Oklahoma. She was a high school student. She was singing in the choir, and her school was requiring that she take a drug test in order to sing in the choir class. And she's like, wait a minute.
This is a high school student?
A high school student.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Why do I have to pee in the cup to sing in the choir? Now, you could understand a drug test if you're playing football, or you're playing soccer, playing lacrosse, you might get hurt. You don't want the kids who are kind of intoxicated hurting themselves on the field. But for choir, you're going to require a drug test? And she walked in the front door and said, hell no, I'm not doing that. We took that case all the way to the Supreme Court.
Really?
Yes.
That someone should be able to...
That the drug test was in an inappropriate search and seizure on her body as a student.
When I hear the ACLU is taking this all the way to the Supreme Court, take me through how many different courts of appeal it has to go through.
Well, it depends. So in most cases, we file in federal court if it's going to go before the Supreme Court on a constitutional matter. So you're filing at the district court level.
Yeah.
And that's usually the trial court. That's where they're determining the facts, the basic laws that are applying. And then it goes up on appeal to the courts of appeal. And it could be either a three-judge courts of appeals, or it could go en banc before it gets to the Supreme Court. So it could be 4 levels of litigation before, 3 levels before you get to the 4th level at the Supreme Court.
So obviously that's a long time.
It can be years.
You have to play the long game.
We play the long game. We map it out.
How did you think that way?
Well, you just got to play the long game, because some of this, you don't know how it's going to play out. That's why having multiple cases is important. You don't know which case is ultimately going to go before the court. So we have a birthright citizenship case. We'll talk about it. That's probably going to be the one argued in the court this term. I think it's most likely 95%. And it was one of many cases that were filed. It was the first case we filed after Trump became president.
Yeah.
And there were multiple other lawsuits. We have a class action, and we had an individual case. And part of it is that you want to make sure you put multiple irons in the fire, because you're not sure how far it's going to go, which judge is going to rule quicker, where the appeal goes. And so you want to make sure that you have multiple cases that can ultimately end up setting it up for the Supreme Court.
You've been at the forefront of so many civil liberties. Post 9/11, we had the Patriot Act, Guantanamo Bay, torture, NSA, mass surveillance,
Marriage equality.
These are civil liberties battles that spanned 4 different presidencies.
Yeah.
Did you find, when you kind of zoom out and look at all of it, did you find massive differences between Democratic presidents versus Republican presidents? Or presidents are going to president, AKA state power will always protect itself?
There are through lines that are consistent. I mean, none of the presidents liked being criticized. And so even Democratic or liberal or progressive presidents, when the ACLU was holding their feet to the fire on marriage equality, for instance, with Barack Obama, they didn't love our criticism. I remember some of the scrapes we got into when we were criticizing the Obama administration for their surveillance issues or for their using of drones to target even U.S. citizens for assassination without judicial order. Anwar al-Awlaki was one of our cases. And so I think it's true that whenever you're in power, you don't like anyone holding your feet to the fire. Now, there are massive policy differences. And so, you know, the years of a Barack Obama were the best years. I didn't know it at the time, but, you know, comparatively to where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of what we've got to do, we've got to hold the feet to the fire of Democrats and Republicans alike. If we ever become the Democratic wing, or the civil liberties wing of the Democratic Party, we're dead. There is zero potency in a civil liberties agenda that doesn't try to span across a political spectrum.
So you're saying this is not a partisan thing?
This is not a partisan thing.
Got it.
And the Democrats can be just as bad on some of the shutting down of dissent and debate. I mean, there's one case we took several years ago, 3 years ago. I got a whole holy hell to pay for it. The NRA was my client. They had a case against Governor Cuomo, who was coming down on them because Governor Cuomo didn't like their position on gun ownership. We believe that you should be able to regulate firearms. So we don't align with the NRA, you know, on gun policy issues. But the governor of New York was saying, if you do business with the NRA, I'm going to cut business ties with you. And the NRA had a case, and then they turned to us and said, will you take this First Amendment case? And we took it. We represented the NRA for free, zero charge.
Yeah.
And we won that case.
But Anthony, you got to go to dinner in DC and New York, and
liberals do not like it.
You got to carry this.
Yes.
You're not going to get a good table at a restaurant.
I'm proud to eat takeout if necessary.
But why?
Because the principles matter.
Okay.
Because the NRA case that we won, 9-0, with Sonia Sotomayor in the majority opinion, is the linchpin case we now use to fight the Trump administration when it's targeting Harvard or the law firms. NRA v. Vulo is the precedential case that we signed, precedential like for precedent, in this litigation. And so if you don't do it in the context of when the Democrats are trying to shut down the legitimate rights of a First Amendment group that's right of center, then how can you stand up for when the Trump administration is targeting Indivisible or the ACLU or other groups? You've got to be consistent.
In 2008, you said, let's pull this up real quick, the 8 years of President Bush will go down in history as one of the darkest moments in America's commitment to human rights. You miss GW?
Yeah, I loved the Bush administration by comparison.
So naive here.
You know, who knew how bad it could get? It was remarkable. It was still, I mean, let's not overstate the case. I mean, the George Bush years, I mean, the idea of torture, of rendition, Guantanamo, a prison camp with no legal recourse, the kind of efforts to arrest American citizens and hold them as enemy combatants without charges, without access to lawyers. I mean, they were running the gauntlet. But we have an administration now that's gone way further. And so the darkest history, I think, in my tenure, I think for many years has been now.
When you see things like the ICC or the ICJ, are you a fan of those institutions as ways to hold power to account? Yeah. Irrespective of partisanship, just for you as an attorney and someone you as the head of the ACLU?
Yeah, I think the International Criminal Court is an incredible kind of accomplishment. The idea that we can actually have rules and norms that apply across countries, critically important. Now, the ACLU, we're entirely focused on the U.S.
Yeah.
So I don't really spend a lot of time thinking about the International Criminal Court. We don't bring cases with the ICC or even with the UN bodies as much. We're focused on the U.S. side. But I think holding governments accountable across the globe and across the political spectrum is critically important. And I want to be clear that this is not I'm not making equivalency arguments. Barack Obama was a much better president than President Trump or President Bush. There were things that he disappointed us greatly on. Guantanamo, the surveillance issues around Edward Snowden. Remember that all broke on his watch. Marriage equality, we got there, but it took them a little bit to search their soul. Took them a little bit too long. And I think what's important is that you have an organization like mine that remains focused and vigilant throughout. We hold their feet to the fire regardless of who's president.
And the ACLU has been very clear in its support for abortion rights, LGBTQ equality, immigrants' rights, criminal law reform, free speech, voting rights, upholding the separation of church and state, the legality of gender-affirming treatments for transgender youth. And all of this is now being rolled back.
Yeah.
All of these rollbacks are technically legal, according to the Supreme Court, which to me feels like 9 people that dress like they're teachers at Hogwarts. But everything they're doing feels illegal.
Yeah.
What do I do with this emotion?
I think you lean into it. So I'm not willing to write off the Supreme Court yet. I mean, I'm clear-eyed. My heart's been broken a number of times by the Supreme Court. Obviously, the rollback of Roe versus Wade and Dobbs was a major inflection point for me.
Why aren't you willing to write off the Supreme Court?
Because I still think that at some point they're gonna have to worry about their own legacy and their own institution. Chief Justice Roberts, he's not going to kind of jeopardize his standing in history or Donald Trump. He's worried about his own obituary, his own standing in history. And the idea that the Supreme Court would allow the president to usurp the Supreme Court's role. And we all remember, I mean, those of us who are trained in the law and a lot of Americans who pay attention like you, all remember the cases that were really kind of the dark moments for the Supreme Court. Korematsu, Japanese-American internment, Dred Scott, Plessy versus Ferguson. Those are the moments that you shudder. You never want to be associated with any of those types of cases.
Sure, yeah.
So I think when some of these cases come up, our job is to remind the Chief Justice, to remind Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh. I don't know if we would remind Alito or Thomas of anything because I think they might be lost to us. They're the only ones I might write off. But I think 7 of them are in play for us. I mean, 3 for sure, maybe the other 4.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And I think like...
And you think the Supreme Court justices, they're really playing for their future in the Houghton Mifflin textbooks. You know, me being in civics class, reading Plessy versus Ferguson, I was like, separate but equal is unconstitutional. Right. You don't want to be on the wrong side of that.
You don't want to be on the wrong side of that. And I think they will realize that their own reputation, and they also live in their own communities, their families, their kids, loved ones around them. I mean, these inflection points become really important kind of moments for them. I mean, they care. They care about what people think or say. They live in communities. This judge I was telling you about, this family separation judge, a Republican appointed judge in San Diego. It was only when the family separation case began to be a crescendo point, when the press was covering it, and people were outraged that we were pulling kids away from their families in deportation proceedings. This judge got religion. You could see it. He would sit up differently on the bench. He paid much closer attention, became much more aggressive in questioning the government, the first Trump administration on family separation. So I think the public zeitgeist, the public gestalt around judges is critically important.
What is the legal theory called unitary executive?
That's a relatively recent development in the way we think about political science or political theory in the U.S.
It sounds like a HBO prestige kind of 1-hour drama.
It could be. It could be a great show.
But yeah, tell us about this concept. But it sounds like it makes the president operate like a king.
Yeah, well, it's completely anathema to the system of co-equal branches of government or a system of checks and balances. It's the idea that the executive branch, because it has such a unique responsibility to legislate and to protect the country, that it should be unitary, kind of a step above than the legislative branch or the judicial branch. And so it's often invoked as a way to kind of say you shouldn't review our policies to the judiciary, or that Congress should not venture into legislating on these issues. It's the idea that only the executive branch should have the authority and the kind of bandwidth to run the agenda.
this fringe theory's now kind of become norm.
Oh no, this is their playbook.
Firing government workers, shutting down USAID, sending the National Guard into cities.
Reappropriating funds.
Totally.
The Alien Enemies Act.
Literally demolishing the White House.
With the Birthright citizenship, executive order. There's every aspect of the Trump administration is about taking the unitary executive, which I think George Bush really started in earnest, and putting it on steroids.
The ACLU has now filed over 430 legal actions. That was during Trump 1.0.
Right.
And then filed over 100 with Trump 2.0. That's within just the first 100 days of Trump 2.0, by the way.
So it's 200 legal actions. It's 110 lawsuits.
Okay. So when I hear a number like that, it's almost like when I hear about the federal deficit on the news.
Right.
Where it's like the US federal deficit is at $800 trillion. And I'm like, well, just make it a gajillion at this point. What does it matter?
Well, it does matter.
So tell me why it matters.
It matters because we're at this clip, we'll do double the number of cases that we did under the first Trump administration. So that gives you a sense. You know, they came out with their agenda to shock and awe us, right? That was their official tagline for their efforts. And they largely achieved that. I mean, they came out of the gate guns a-blazing. What they were met with also was shocking and awesome, right? Because there were not just our legal cases, but other groups. And Hasan, I want to be really clear here. We're not the only ones who are doing this important work. I mean, the ACLU is an essential worker, but we're part of an ecosystem, which is critically important. Democracy Forward is another organization that does amazing work. Sky Perryman is a dynamo. Public Citizen, Democracy Defenders Network. There's so many NGOs that have divided up their work. We're constantly in touch with each other on Signal. I was pointing to my phone because it's my pocket. And we kind of constantly in touch with each other. Not my case, you take it. You know, this client comes to us, no, go there. If donors want to say, I want to work on the Doge issue, go to Democracy Forward. We are playing a game of dividing so that they don't conquer us, so that we can not all stand on second base if we want to score.
Why does it matter? Why do you find it necessary to file this comically large number of lawsuits?
Because you rob them of momentum. Because, you know, if they want to play this game, we'll play it with them.
Okay, so the strategy is to what? Stretch the series? Is it to defeat and win every case? What's the legal strategy?
The legal strategy is to dilute, right, their policies, to defeat them. Ultimately, we'll win a bunch of them. And to deflect, right, to play for time. Mm-hmm. Some of this we know that they might be able to achieve long term. But if you play for time, that can be a success. You know, so a lot of the litigation, not our litigation, but litigation done by groups like Democracy Forward, for instance, on the federal government employees who are being fired. You know, ultimately, everyone kind of knew that the courts would allow the executive, the president, to fire government employees. But all that litigation bought them 6-9 months of pay, of benefits.
Right.
Gave people a chance to put their lives together, to get their resumes together, to figure out what they're going to do.
Yeah.
So sometimes even if you know you're going to lose at the end of the game, playing for time is an effective strategy.
Well, let's talk about two big wins. Let's talk about the Alien Enemies Act, and let's talk about Birthright citizenship.
We're going to win both of those.
But let's break this down. What is the Alien Enemies Act?
It's a statute in 1798 that allows the government the ability to remove people from the country if they are a threat to the national interest, if we're at war with those countries. We've done it 3 times. The War of 1812, the First World War, and the Second World War, where we removed, like for instance, on World War II, we removed German citizens who were on American soil saying, we're at war with the Nazis, we're going to deport you guys. And so now this President Trump, has invoked the Alien Enemies Act in a war that has not been named, doesn't exist. He's saying that he's at war with these Venezuelan drug cartels. He's saying that he can remove people from the country without due process under these expansive powers he's assumed for himself. We're going to win this one. We already are winning. We filed a bunch of these cases. We filed one case and then it ended up having to become 13, 14 different cases.
So why does the president not have a strong and compelling argument here?
Because the statute is very clear. I mean, we're not at war. There's not a country. And even under the previous jurisprudence, under the World War II, the German citizens were given due process. Here they're saying we don't have to give individuals due process.
Right.
So if we gave the German citizens due process during World War II, we have to give, even if the act were to apply, which we argue does not, they're still not complying with what happened before. I think we win this one hands down. In Texas, we have a case in the Fifth Circuit, not a great place for us, usually a conservative jurisdiction. And we won with a Trump-appointed judge saying, yeah, you've got to grant them due process.
What is birthright citizenship, and why do you feel so confident about that win as well?
So this one is kind of foundational. This is the soul of America. This is how America fixed its original sin of chattel slavery. It's how we took the children of slaves and made them citizens. I mean, it's hallowed ground, right? It is foundational. The idea that in the 14th Amendment, we found a way to grant citizenship to the people who we considered to be property and 3/5 of a person. And it was also then codified subsequently in the statute. So when the president says, we're not going to grant you citizenship per se if you're born here, we're going to look into the citizenship of your parents, it's really going at the heart of America. It's where the two great rivers of our country that comprise our character.
And it's also one of the proudest moments of the unique American experiment, which is how do you take people of disparate backgrounds, religious backgrounds, countries of origin, and make it one cohesive nation?
It's how a nation of immigrants becomes a nation. Out of many, one, right? That's how we become one. And so the idea that in the executive order, we were somewhat surprised. We had heard that they were going to try to target this. It was in Project 2025. There were rumblings about this in Trump 1.0.
And you feel confident you will win this?
Oh, I will bet my bottom dollar.
I mean, well, because it's literally on the dollar. It says e pluribus unum. What do you think Donald Trump's core agenda with this is, and why does he believe this needs to be eradicated?
You know, so I've had some conversations also in people around the Trump administration to understand it, because it just seems like, why are you going after the holy book?
Yeah, why this fight?
Why the holy book? This holy book of what this country is all about. And they really see it as an existential threat, that the reason that we have so many people coming to this country is because they are seeking birthright citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they don't see it for the power of what makes this country great. And that if you actually wiped away birthright citizenship, you'd create a vehicle for intergenerational stigma and discrimination in a way that we cannot accept. And so I was surprised. I also heard that the Thursday before inauguration that it was going to be one of his first executive orders. So I came back to the office and said, people, we got to get this ready. Get me this lawsuit ready. And this was months in the planning, Hasan. I mean, we were, this is not, lawsuits are not like, writing a letter to mom or dad. You've got to really develop them. So we had spent months thinking about where we want to file in the First Circuit, because it's a good jurisdiction for us, and not too much of a backlog like you find in California. You have to find cases and clients, and you have to hone the theories. So we found an Indonesian immigrants' rights group in New Hampshire. We had to find members of that group who were pregnant, whose kids would be born after the signing of the executive order, who could possibly lose their birthright citizenship. So we had this already. And then when I got the information saying that, no, they're going to run this play on the first day, we were able to file it within 2 hours.
Now that I understand that the cases that you have filed and the cases that you seem so sure you will win, when should I prepare for the Supreme Court to completely overturn that?
I don't think it will happen this time around. I think the court understands what's at stake in both the Alien Enemies Act litigation and in birthright citizenship. I think those we can plan on winning. I think where I'm much more worried, so I don't want to kind of paint too rosy a picture, because I'm clear-eyed and I want to be very balanced in what I tell you and your listeners and your watchers and your viewers, is there are places where I'm incredibly worried about how the government has fully unleashed the power of the federal government on immigrant communities. They've already deported 500,000 people. They've already pushed out 1.6 million people through their self-deportation efforts. Mm-hmm. They are marching down across the country an effort to...
And ICE has only ramped up, and then they've also created and started building almost like a splinter cell group of essentially prisons to put people into those detention centers.
They have $170 billion in the big, beautiful bill to put the Department of Homeland Security on steroids. to build more prisons, to build more jails, to give bonuses to people and hiring bonuses to people who want to be immigration agents and border agents. So we are just watching the beginning of this ramping up on this attack on immigrants. And that's what I'm most worried about. And there's not one lawsuit that's going to stop that.
I mean, that's the existential thing. You have this huge comet that is $170 billion.
Totally.
That money is going to be allocated. And it's going to be spent on more of those vans.
Totally.
And more of those agents.
Exactly.
And more of the ski mask people getting pulled off the street. That money is going to be spent. And then the ACLU on the legal side is going to have to then be fighting through the analog channels that is the legal system.
Raid by raid, site by site. It's retail. This is what's challenging. And Birthright, one lawsuit will knock it out. That'll be our lawsuit. We'll knock it out this year. Watch. I'll be back in June.
Great.
We'll win. We'll
do the Martinellis. We'll pop some Martinellis and we'll have a little party.
Celebrate.
Yeah.
But on the deportations and the raids, oh my God. If we don't find a way to change the tide on this, to make it politically unacceptable, to pull independents and good Republicans and the business sector to say, wait a minute, you're decimating our communities. You're deporting people that we ought not deport. Unless we change hearts and minds and change the political tide, we're going to really be in a tough spot. Because thousands of people already are being caught up in the dragnet.
One of the things we were chatting about in the prep for the interview is you will read the dissenting opinions. And sometimes you'll be like, oh my God, this is a shocking move by Alito.
Yeah.
Or like, holy shit, fun fact, Gorsuch is a fierce proponent of Native American rights. Did not know that
and
Neil.
Also very good on gay and lesbian rights.
Yeah, did not know Neil really got down with both indigenous rights and gay rights.
The game is to count to 5. So you usually have 3.
Okay.
And then you got to get 2 more, right? So then it's always about which one of these folks can you pull away? Is it Gorsuch on Native American rights or LGBT rights? Is it Kavanaugh, who's more of a centrist? Is it the Chief Justice, who's going to worry about his reputation and his obituary and worry about the legitimacy of the court? So you got to get to 5.
So how do we sway that?
I mean, that's what we do. We spend.
They do podcasts? I can get them on the podcast.
Well, we should try to get them on the podcast. They're kind of lively people. I know some of them personally.
Really?
Yeah. I spent a bunch of time with some of them.
No, I've nerded out about this, by the way.
Oh, no, they're great.
There's Neil. Do you know Neil Katyal? He's a Supreme Court.
He's a great guy.
Case expert.
He is. And he knows the court even better than anybody.
Okay, so here's another nerding out question.
Tell me.
So when people on the internet see these Supreme Court rulings, they're like, oh my fucking God, Clarence Thomas, you fucking piece of shit. How could you do this? My sister, who I'm not trying to brag, went to UPenn Law, worked in Big Law, worked at Skadden Arps. Like she's a real shooter. She was like, Hasan Bhai, make no mistake. When you read these dissenting opinions, every Supreme Court justice is a brilliant writer. You are an attorney, you wax poetic in the PDFs. Do you agree with this sentiment?
I think some of them are better than others. I'm not sure I would.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Wait, so your book reads review on, they're not all 10 out of 10?
They're not all 10 out of 10.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I read them all. I mean, I read most of the opinions on, especially in our cases. And the dissents, especially in the ones we lose, are critically important because they also give you nuggets about how to think about where to go forward. I mean, it's like a treasure hunt. You're always thinking about how do you distinguish these cases from future cases? What would bring people along? You'll understand some of the dynamics.
So you're saying the dissent gives you future precedent of, if I were to turn Gorsuch on this, he's worried about this.
Oh, you're trying to always understand how you turn people. And dissenting opinions, it's like oral arguments. When the justices are peppering the person with an argument, they're not always just asking the question of the individual lawyer. They're asking questions of each other. It's like pickleball. They have to go through the lawyer to get the ball back to someone on the other side of the bench. And so it gives you insights into, okay, well, this is interesting. So if Sonia Sotomayor is asking a question of us that then is about a question that Gorsuch raised, she's helping us understand how to zero in on an issue that Gorsuch is interested in. So we're always mapping it out. That's why we're in the court. We're taking assiduous notes. We're trying to figure out what clues are there, what are ways to follow up. That's part of the genius.
So are you saying dissenting opinions are just really well-written YouTube comments?
No, they're beautiful. They're beautiful records of history. I mean, I think YouTube can be great, but I think these are the historical records of the government.
You heard it here,
our
folks.
history.
Anthony Romero, there's levels to this shit. And YouTube comments are properly indexed. What is an amicus brief? I hear it all the time.
Yeah, it's a friend of the court.
But
Literally.
I have no idea what it means.
So it means that, you're not a party in the litigation, right? So the parties are usually defendant or plaintiff or appellee and appellant. So you're not the party in the case, but you are an interested person that the outcome of the case has implications for you or your life or your organization, your corporation. And so you have interests that you want to express to the court on how it turns out. And so the friends of the court, the amicus briefs, provide a larger context about what's at play in the decision for judges. And sometimes the judges really rely upon the amicus briefs.
And who writes the amicus brief?
It depends. I mean, we write our amicus briefs and we write them ourselves in-house.
Got it. So the ACLU will write an amicus brief.
Yeah.
Okay, this is not fan fiction from just people
No. We draft them.
that have very passionate opinions about
Oh, no. We really
nature of the
kind of,
case.
we agonize over
Got
these
it.
briefs.
Okay.
We want to make sure they sing.
And are you quite impressed by the writing in the amicus briefs that you guys
We
provide?
only hire the best writers. We can get the best ones.
Really?
So, yes.
Okay.
We have some writers who are just, and there are some briefs that sometimes are duds. I remember one years ago when someone was working on a brief with Jose Padilla. He was an enemy combatant, a U.S. citizen who was being held without charges or without access to lawyers. And they gave me a brief. I'm like, this one don't sing.
Wow.
You got to give me a case for the history books.
Anthony, you were like
You gotta
a record label executive.
You got to give me one that talks about this,
Yeah.
this inflection point.
You're an amicus brief Barry Gordy. You're like, I need this to be a hit, baby.
Write this in a way that
Yeah.
I want to be, what has got to be memorable.
Can we pivot to speech for a
Sure,
moment?
of
Let's
course.
talk about free speech. Some of the most high profile cases that you have been involved with and the ACLU has been involved with deal with free speech. But one of the biggest fights that's happening right now involve foreign nationals being detained and possibly deported. But the cases aren't really about immigration. They're about free speech.
Right.
Can you just give us and get our viewers and listeners up to speed with what is happening right now with Mahmoud Khalil?
So the government arrested and is trying to deport Mahmoud Khalil, a legal permanent resident, green card holder, married to an American citizen with a U.S. citizen child, because they think that his views and his positions on Palestine are contrary to American interests. And so they're trying to just remove him from the country. It's the same way that we saw with Reza Öztürk or Mohsen Madawi and other folks that we have represented on these cases, where they're being targeted for exclusion from our country because they're not U.S. citizens, because the government doesn't like what they say or what they think or their activism. And that's flat out un-American.
I mean, you have called this modern McCarthyism.
It is a modern day McCarthyism.
And my understanding is that McCarthyism ended when in 1954, a government lawyer, Joseph Welch, said,
Have you no
"Have
shame?
you no sense of decency, sir?" Let's take a look.
Let us not assassinate this lad further, Senator. You've done enough. Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?
Now, obviously, this wouldn't go viral now because this wasn't cropped for vertical. For some reason, the
He's not looking at
C-SPAN
the
camera
camera.
op wasn't
I know.
on him. This is bad content. This is garbage content. But that quote rings so true. Have you no sense of decency? They were making people stand up and basically have to say, I am not a Russian spy.
And
I'm not an enemy of the state.
And McCarthy died disgraced. He died alone, a miserable death in exile from the high point of when he was writing Government Power to shut down dissent and debate. And when his decency was called, he was kicked to the curb. And I think that's what we've got to play for long term, is this moment when individuals are being targeted because they happen to disagree with the government. It's not just these activists. It's not just Mahmoud Khalil. It's not just Reza Öztürk. It's Harvard, right? They're targeting Harvard because of their DEI practices or what they did or did not do on anti-Semitism. They're targeting the law firms because they had individuals who were populated at the law firms who were somehow adverse to the Trump administration.
Well, how do you feel about all these institutions, whether it's television networks or Harvard or legal institutions, basically paying out these settlements and just surrender like they're the French army?
It's very depressing. And it's wrong. It's wrong. I mean, these institutions ought to stand up straight, especially the law firms. Lawyers have to understand.
Haven't you had any private convos, like off the record with these guys to be
Sure.
like, come on, like, I understand this, it's about survival
Sure.
and self-preservation, but this ends in 3 years. Why are you doing this?
And they always have these kind of different mumbo jumbo about how they're thinking about the long-term interests of their law firms or their institutions. They're talking about being between a rock and a hard place. They kind of reassure me that their heart and their values are still with us. Yeah, and talk is cheap. And I think ultimately, in the end of the day, they will rue the day that they capitulated. And let's talk about the media. I mean, the idea that some of these large media executives, ABC News, for instance, paying off a lawsuit because of the Stephanopoulos interview, a lawsuit they would have won if they had just run the gauntlet. But it's easier and it's more expedient for them to pay the president millions of dollars than to win in court.
Isn't there any other historical context that shows that the extortionist will always come back
and pay a bigger price? Yeah. I mean, you can Dr. Fausto, right? It's the bargain with the devil.
The ACLU is famous for defending some pretty awful characters in
Yes.
First Amendment cases. We're talking about the KKK in the 1920s, neo-Nazis in the 60s and 70s, and the NRA, as you mentioned at the top of our interview, as recently as 2024. Why is it so important to defend someone's right to say something, even if you disagree with it? And why does that concept fry so many people's brains?
I think because people refuse to think about the bigger principle that's involved. Because if you allow the government to censor the speech of someone you disagree with, you allow the government to usurp that power, that they can come back and use that power against your own speech. And so that's why I mean, for instance, we have a case, we have a great client, a Black Lives Matter protester, DeRay McKesson, who was being held liable for violence that happened at one of the BLM protests, right? He organized a protest, someone got off the farm and violence was committed. And they charged his organizer with incitement at his protest.
Okay.
The case that we use in DeRay's case, right, in the BLM case, is a case called Brandenburg versus Ohio, is a case on a Nazi, right? The same set of facts. A Nazi march, some crazy Nazi gets violent, and they hold the Nazi organizer responsible for the violence.
Right. And essentially in that case, what you're saying is that was a crazy Nazi who should not be conflated with the peaceful Nazi, which even though that's an insane sentence to say,
it's the way we have to think about it, right?
It's the way you constructed that case, right?
And incitement is not protected. Freedom of speech and freedom of association is protected. So to the idea that we're using a Nazi case, Brandenburg versus Ohio, in defending the rights of
DeRay McKesson, who was a
BLM protester,
sure.
makes exactly my point. That if you allow them to do this against people you don't like, they're going to use that power on individuals you do like. That's the Cuomo case with the NRA in New York. If Cuomo can target the NRA in New York, you don't think the governors of Florida and Texas are going to target the ACLU? We cannot allow Democratic governors to target the lawful activities of right of center groups, because then we are open hunting season in places where we are out of favor and where we're unpopular.
I mean, a similar sentiment to that is also just take even the concept of hate speech. If that concept is put in the wrong person's hands, for example, Donald Trump may define hate speech as something very differently that you define hate speech as, or what I define hate speech as. And he could define it as you make a joke that he doesn't like about him.
And they're doing that already. You saw Pam Bondi, the Attorney General. She got her knickers in a twist on the whole question around hate speech, that this was hate speech that we would not tolerate. Mm-hmm. Well, no, the Attorney General, hate speech is also protected speech. And so for the highest law enforcement official in the country to not get it right, to have it so convoluted that you can actually try to regulate the speech you don't like, especially I think in this context with critics of Charlie Kirk. And sure, Charlie Kirk was assassinated, he was murdered. That should not have happened. It was a tragedy for his family. It's bad for the American political experiment to have people killed because of their thoughts and ideas. But people also had the right to criticize Charlie Kirk's political positions. And for the Attorney General to then conflate that, saying that's hate speech that we're going to target and we're going to regulate. Oh my God, it's chilling. It's totally chilling.
Can we talk about the firewall for freedom?
Sure.
Other than voting or donating to the ACLU, how can ordinary people or even local governments help reinforce civil liberties now?
People can get engaged. This is not a time for spectators. I love the fact that they watch your show. That's why I'm here. I'm hoping they watch the show, right? So after they watch the show, they got to do something.
If you guys weren't watching the show, he wouldn't have come on. He's a very busy guy.
Otherwise, I got other stuff I got to do.
Yeah.
And I think part of what we're hoping to do is that once people get engaged, they will take action. Firewall for Freedom is an effort to get attorneys general, governors, mayors, city councils to do the right thing and stand up for the rights and liberties of their people, especially in blue states. So, like for instance, until they build all these until they build all these prison beds and all these detention centers, they don't have room to hold all the immigrants they're hoping to pick up. They're going to have to use local jails and local prisons to do so. If we can make those local jails off limits to the federal immigration officials, they're not going to be able to pick people up. They're going to be able to deport them. If you ensure that you sever these agreements between local law enforcement officials and immigration enforcement officials, that the police should not become the patsies for customs and border officials, right? Not their job. Their job is to solve crime and to prevent crime. Their job is not to deport people who are in our country unlawfully. And so if you can make sure that local law enforcement officials and governors stand up straight, it's also a way that we can use this system of federalism. I mean, part of what is exciting about the American political experiment is that the unitary executive is very much checked by our federalist system. The governors are incredibly powerful. They're the ones who have the capacity to often determine the conditions, the rights, the liberties, the rules of the road in a lot of jurisdictions. And so we don't want to cede that power to the federal government.
I have some extra time with you. Can I ask you a couple questions about the way you personally see the world?
Sure, of course.
It's not even on the question sheet, but I always wanted to ask you.
No, go for it.
So we had Ken Burns on the show. Ken Burns, I'm
brilliant.
I'm a stan.
Me too.
I'll say it. I'm a stan. I fuck with Ken Burns heavy. One of the things I love about Ken Burns is his historical analysis and context that he has put specifically about the American Revolution in 1776, his new documentary series that's coming out. I have found the Founding Fathers to be so interesting, not only in who they were as historical figures, but who they were as writers, thinkers, and linguists.
Yeah.
Something that I have oftentimes grappled with as a child of immigrants, as an Indian American, as a Muslim American, I have struggled with sometimes reading their work and knowing that I was not thought of or even included in their vision of what the country could be. Anthony Romero, I think it's safe to say you are living your ancestors' wildest dreams. You are the first Latino head of the ACLU. You are the first gay head of the ACLU. Is that correct?
Yeah.
How do you lead an organization that is not partisan, but how do you look at the law and how do you look at this country that may have not always seen you as a part of its fabric?
I think part of what the genius of the Founding Fathers, all of them men, is that they wrote in such a way that provided enough give in the joints so that people like me could step into roles and that the society and the rules and the norms and the protections could envelope people that they didn't initially envision. I mean, for instance, they were surgical, and some rights are reserved to U.S. citizens, like the right to vote, right? Or the right to be a president. You have to be born in the jurisdiction of the United States. So they were very clear that these rights are for citizens. In other places, they use the word persons. No person shall be denied life, liberty, or property without due process of law. No person. They didn't use citizen. That means they once imagined immigrants, people born elsewhere. And so they may not have fully had you or me in mind when they were writing some of this language, but the choice of words, the fact that they chose one word in one place and another word in another place, meant that they were kind of visionary enough to anticipate the fact that this would evolve and grow. And that's what I love. I mean, this organization, my organization, is about unleashing the great potential in every single person, Hasan. This is about you get to decide who you want to be. what type of show you want to have, what you want to say, who you invite as your guest, with whom you associate when you walk out that door, what God you worship, if any God at all. It is your decision to actualize your life in the wildest, most remarkable way that you envision. That is what we unlock in the civil liberties agenda. And that's why I believe that my organization resonates with everybody. It could be a Republican. You want to be an NRA advocate? You want to fight for gun rights? We will stand up for your right to advocate and to petition your government and to freely associate and to speak your mind. Because that is what makes you, you. And that is what makes this country a great country. And so I refuse to cede the flag. I refuse to be pessimistic. I refuse to think that an ideologue or a party should control our agenda. I mean, this is really about unleashing the very best in each of us.
I mean, well, you've answered the last question, which was hopeful or hopeless. Clearly very hopeful.
Hopeful.
Well,
there is no room for hopeless. That's hopeless, right?
You heard it here first, folks. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's Anthony Romero. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you.
Hurry right away.